Could Nick Nurse be on the hot seat heading into next season for the Philadelphia 76ers? So we're going to discuss here today because although Daryl Morey did confirm that Nurse will be back next season, some moves the Sixers might be making along their coaching staff that do not sound promising for Nick Nurse. And before we get into all the details and the latest report that came out, I want to know, do you believe in Nick Nurse as the head coach of this team? Just 2 seasons in with Philadelphia, and already lots of rumors and lots of fans calling for him to be fired after a rough season. So I want to gauge where everybody is at. If you still believe in Nick Nurse as this team's head coach, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. If you don't, I want you to get in the comments section and explain why you no longer believe in Nick Nurse. So as I mentioned, Daryl Morey did say in his end of season press conference that both he and Nick Nurse will return next season for the 76ers. So he's not on the hot seat at this very moment, but Michael Scotto of HoopsHype did report the Sixers could be firing some of Nurse's assistants. Here's what Scotto had to say. While Daryl Morey publicly stated he and Coach Nick Nurse are both returning to Philadelphia next season, there's an expectation that Nurse's assistant coaching staff will see changes this offseason, league sources told HoopsHype. And when I saw that, the first thing I thought of was how similar this kind of sounds to what happened with Taylor Jenkins over there with the Memphis Grizzlies. If you don't know, obviously Taylor Jenkins was fired very close to the end of the season just a couple of weeks ago, but the reasons that came out for him being fired go back to last offseason when a lot of his coaching staff was fired, kind of putting the writing on the wall for Taylor Jenkins as the head coach of the Grizzlies. They replaced his staff, brought in new guys, now those new guys took over. So could we be seeing a similar situation where the Sixers will fire some of his assistants and then kind of get the ball rolling for potentially firing Nick Nurse next offseason? I will say this, and I've been pretty steadfast on this take. I don't think Nick Nurse should be on the hot seat for the Philadelphia 76ers. He's just had 2 years to coach this team in Philadelphia, coming off of a good run in Toronto, where, of course, he won that championship with Kawhi Leonard in 2019. And to start his time with the Sixers, it was great. He was having this Sixers team play at an elite level and career years across the board for a lot of players in 2023-24. If you look back to last year's numbers before the All-Star break in the 2023-24 season, of course, this is before Joel Embiid goes down with his initial injury, the Sixers were 6th in offensive rating, 12th in defensive rating, 7th in net rating. That's really the time where I think you can gauge the job Nick Nurse did, because that's when he had a fully healthy team. Then after the All-Star break, of course, Embiid goes down. Those numbers drop off pretty significantly besides defensive rating. But he's never really had a fully healthy team besides that start to his career in 2023 with Philadelphia. And look at what he was doing with some of the stars on this team. Joel Embiid, before he got hurt last season, was well on his way to winning another MVP. Almost 35 points, 11 rebounds, nearly 6 assists, shooting very, very efficiently. That is a career high in points, assists, and three-point percentage for Embiid at the start of his time with Nick Nurse. Same with Tyrese Maxey. Last season, 2023-2024, career high in points, career high in assists, and of course ended up winning the Most Improved Player award. And I loved what I was seeing out of Nurse last year, running different sets and different offenses that allowed the Sixers to move the ball more and get other players more involved, especially allowing Joel Embiid to be more of a central playmaking hub instead of just dumping it down to him in the post every single time. Now, certainly he wasn't perfect this season. I get it. A lot of ups and downs for this team as a whole, and despite all the challenges he had to deal with, even when this team was relatively healthy, things didn't always look perfect. The rotations weren't always great. At the beginning of the season, certainly wasn't playing as many as the young players you'd like to see. Of course, he ended up having to do that because of all the injuries. Didn't really have a choice at the end of the season, and some questionable in-game adjustments throughout the year. So it wasn't perfect, and so I understand why fans would be frustrated, but I think some of that frustration is a little bit misplaced because of how much this team had to deal with injury-wise. It's tough for any coach to really have to find success on the floor with guys who aren't used to playing together. He had 55 different starting lineups this year, did Nick Nurse. in 82 games. That is unbelievable. But when we talk about Nurse possibly not being the coach of this team long term, you got to consider this as well. Daryl Morey, in his long career as a general manager, going back to his time with the Houston Rockets, has never had a coach for longer than 4 seasons. It sounded a little bit unbelievable to me at first because they had some pretty successful teams over there in Houston, but never had a coach last over 4 years. Nick Nurse is entering his 3rd season with the 76ers, so reaching that time where, look, if things start to not work out and this team either fails to even make the playoffs or make a deep playoff run next year, it could be the writing on the wall for Nick Nurse. So it's going to be a very, very big year for Nurse as the coach of this team. If he can't, of course, he needs health to be able to get his players on the floor. But if they fail to reach expectations again and fail to reach the playoffs again, look, we've seen pretty short leashes in the NBA as of late with Taylor Jenkins, with Michael Malone, with Mike Brown over in Sacramento. There's really not a whole lot of patience anymore in the NBA these days. And despite Joel Embiid always praising and wanting continuity, it's just the realism and just where the NBA is right now. If you don't get quick success, you're out of there. So Nick Nurse could be on the hot seat now after some of his assistant coaches seeming like they will be fired this offseason. How hot do you think Nick Nurse's seat is right now? Give me a scale 1 through 10. If you think not hot at all, he's totally safe no matter what happens next season, give me a 1. If you think he could be fired weeks into the season if things go poorly, give me a 10 down in the comments section. Now, of course, even though I don't think Nick Nurse should be on the hot seat entering this upcoming season, it is a possibility. And with these potential firings, we have to talk about what happens if Nurse does get fired. So we're going to examine and go through some potential Nick Nurse replacements here in just a second. But first, got to shout out today's presenting sponsor, and that is Game Time. Game Time is the best and easiest way to find tickets to all your favorite sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, and a whole lot more. Makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff tickets, with the NBA playoffs, of course, coming up, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Now, of course, Sixers not going to be in the NBA playoffs, but the Philadelphia Phillies are underway with their season, and if you want to get tickets to a Phillies game, as they just finished up a great series, well, decent series, splitting against the San Francisco Giants, it's super easy. You just got to open the app, go to the Phillies, you click on which date you want to go to, and you can see the view from your seat from the map view, wherever you want to sit in the stadium. You click on that, you can see the actual view from where you'll be sitting within Citizens Bank Park. It is great, and with zone deals, you can save even more when you choose a section, like Game Time chooses seats, and with their last-minute deals, their specialty, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. And I encourage that you toggle the all-in pricing feature that allows you to see the total upfront so you don't get hit with any surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's start with some coaches that were just recently fired in some pretty shocking moves. I'll start here with Michael Malone. Now, of course, some of these coaches will most likely be hired this offseason. So if Nurse isn't fired until later next season or even next offseason, some of these guys might have jobs, but they're available right now, so we got to talk about them. Of course, Michael Malone, former Nuggets head coach, was just fired in a shocking move. And look, his resume speaks for itself. A 56.4 regular season winning percentage, 510 and 392. 55% winning percentage in the playoffs, and of course won that 2023 NBA championship over there in Denver, and is the winningest head coach in Denver Nuggets history. And a lot of people very, very surprised when this move happened. Of course, it comes out that both Michael Malone and former Nuggets GM Andrew Booth, who was also fired, were kind of at odds with the rotations and which players they wanted to play. Michael Malone's a coach who does prioritize playing veterans over playing young players. The GM there, Calvin Booth, wanted to play some of his younger guys, like a Peyton Watson, like a Christian Brown, play some more of those guys. But Michael Malone was really prioritizing the guys like Russell Westbrook and signing more of these veterans to make the push to win now around Jokic. They didn't see eye to eye. He ended up getting canned. I think Michael Malone probably going to get a job pretty quickly this offseason, but he's one of the guys where, if Nurse is fired, I would be happy and be fine with Michael Malone being the next head coach of this team. I think same could be said for Taylor Jenkins. Now, I have a little more reservations about Taylor Jenkins than I do with Malone, but if they did decide to move on from Nurse, I do think it would be a downgrade, in my opinion, so I wouldn't let go of Nurse for Taylor Jenkins, but it's not like you're going from a great coach to an awful coach. I do think Taylor Jenkins is a very good head coach in this league, and I think he's proven that for the most part. 250 and 214 in the regular season, just 9 and 14 in the playoffs. Certainly has had some playoff shortcomings over there in Memphis, but also the winningest head coach in Memphis history. So we saw two head coaches who have both won the most games in their franchise's history get canned with weeks left in the regular season. Just unbelievable where the NBA is at this point. Now, the thing with Taylor Jenkins as opposed to Michael Malone is Taylor Jenkins has a very strong track record at developing younger players. The Grizzlies, it seems, every year, no matter where they're picking, late first, late second, early second, doesn't matter. Whoever they draft ends up being a key part of their rotation. I mean, you just look at their roster. Jalen Wells has been really good. Obviously, they've been able to develop higher picks like John Morant, Jaren Jackson, even Desmond Bane back into the first round, Scottie Pippen Jr., right? They have a lot of guys on that roster that, like G.G. Jackson, just you can go on and on and on. That being said, does have a track record of playoff disappointment. And we know what that feels like in Philadelphia. So maybe if they do decide to go a rebuild route next offseason and let go of Embiid, let go of Paul George, maybe then that's a scenario where you bring in somebody like Taylor Jenkins, who has shown he can develop that young talent, but would be a little bit concerned with his lack of playoff success, although has dealt with a ton of injuries as well. Then there's Mike Brown, former Kings head coach, who was fired a little bit earlier in the season, back around January, I believe. And what was also a pretty shocking move, even though the Kings were struggling at that point, reports came out that he was beefing with De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox shut those down. The players, according to reports, really did not want Mike Brown to be fired. But here we are. His resume, he's been coaching for quite a long time. Goes back even before his time with the Kings these past few seasons. A 454 and 304 record. Nearly a 60% winning percentage, 50 and 40 in the playoffs. Is a two-time NBA Coach of the Year and actually was a coach all the way back in 2007 with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Helped lead that team, of course. LeBron James helped lead that team as well to the finals where they ended up losing. And was also an assistant during the Golden State Warriors dynasty under Steve Kerr. So he has a ton of coaching experience, and I think a mistake by the Sacramento Kings to let him go. I would actually love Mike Brown as a potential option for this team if they did move on from Nick Nurse. So I think those three guys would all be very solid options as I look at the current coaching landscape right now. Of course, don't know yet who's going to get hired where and when, and potential other coaches that will open up next offseason to be in that coaching market. But those three are kind of the three main guys where if they don't get scooped up now, I could be interested in the future. Other head coaching candidates, guys who I'm a little more out on, but potentially James Borrego, former Charlotte Hornets head coach, actually did pretty decent with the Hornets, all things considered, from 2018 to 2022. Never made the playoffs, but led them to a 43 and 39 record in 21-22, which was Charlotte's first winning season in quite a long time. Frank Vogel, I'm a little more out on, of course, did lead the Lakers to a title in 2020 in the bubble, but hasn't really been able to stick around a whole lot anywhere since then, and even in his whole coaching career. Questions about his leadership, and his track record's good, but not the kind of coach I'm looking for. Of course, Sam Cassell, former Sixers assistant head coach, who is now with the Boston Celtics, has been getting a lot of buzz for a while to become a potential head coach. And I think coming back to Philadelphia, if you want to go with more of a route of someone who's not quite as established, but who can build up their resume, and someone who hasn't had all these other coaches in their ears, I would like Sam Cassell. Mike Budenholzer, I'm totally out on. Had a really rough stint with the Phoenix Suns, and won a title a few years back with the Bucks, but even got back to his days with Atlanta, was never able to win the big one. Didn't last too long in Milwaukee, and obviously with the Suns, that was a disaster. Interesting name to keep an eye on is Royal Ivey. Of course, did play for the Sixers way back in the day, and although he was never a high-end player, has been a pretty high-end coach, currently a part of Ime Udoka's staff on the Houston Rockets, and as the head coach of the South Sudanese national team, led them to, widespread praise, for their play in the FIBA World Cup, and guided South Sudan to their first ever FIBA World Cup appearance, led them to the Olympics in 2024. So very, very impressive there. Very strong coaching background. Another guy who, if you want to give him his shot in the NBA as a head coach, I'd be pretty interested in that. See what he can do. So those are some head coach candidates if Nurse does get fired. What say you? Get down in the comment section right now. If Nurse is fired next year, no guarantee he is, but with some of these moves, it is certainly a possibility. Who would you hire? Let me know down in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that sub button, and we'll see you next time here on 76ers Now.